Have you ever watched a story that slowly pulls you in, and before you even realize it, you're completely lost inside its world? Thrash is one of those films that doesn't just entertain, it makes you feel every moment. From the very beginning, the movie builds a sense of mystery and tension, where every scene carries meaning and every character hides something deeper beneath the surface. As the story unfolds, you start to see how small decisions lead to unexpected consequences. The film takes you through intense moments, emotional turns, and powerful scenes that keep you hooked till the very end. It's not just about what happens, it's about why it happens and how it changes everything. The characters in this film are not simple. Each one has a purpose, a backstory, and a role that connects to the bigger picture. Their performances bring life to the story, making every scene feel real and impactful. But what truly makes Thrash stand out is the way it was created, the vision behind the story, the effort put into its production, and the ideas that inspired it. Every detail, from storytelling to execution, adds something unique to the overall experience. In this video, we're going to break down the complete story, explore the characters, and analyze everything from its creation to its success. And just to be clear, this is not a full movie or a movie screening. It's a detailed review and analysis made for learning and entertainment purposes. So let's begin and take a closer look at Thrash. Something feels wrong from the very first frame, but it is not loud or obvious. It creeps in slowly, like a thought you cannot shake off. The kind of unease that builds before anything actually happens. That is the tone Thrash sets within seconds, and it never really lets go after that. This is not a movie that tries to scare you with quick tricks. It aims deeper and it takes its time getting there. This is a full review and breakdown, not the full movie. The goal here is to walk through the story, the characters, and the experience, while adding insight into what makes it work or where it starts to crack. Directed by Tommy Wirkola, Thrash leans into psychological horror with a grounded, almost raw atmosphere. The cast brings a strong emotional core, especially Phoebe Dynevor and Whitney Peak, while Jimin Hoon-soo adds a quiet but heavy presence that shapes the story in subtle ways. The tone stays dark, tense, and controlled, rarely giving the audience a moment to fully relax. The film opens in near silence, with a wide, empty landscape that feels both open and suffocating at the same time. The setting does not rely on shadows or darkness alone. Instead, it uses space, distance, and stillness to create tension. A single figure moves across this environment, small against the vast background, immediately setting a sense of isolation. There is no rush to explain anything. The movie trusts the viewer to sit in that discomfort and absorb the mood before any answers are given. Phoebe Dynevor plays Elara, a character who carries visible exhaustion even before anything strange begins. Her introduction is quiet but loaded with detail. Small actions, like the way she hesitates before opening a door or pauses when she hears a distant sound, suggest a history that has already shaped her. The film does not spell it out. It lets her behavior tell the story, which makes her feel real from the start. That grounded performance becomes the anchor for everything that follows. Elara arrives at a remote rehabilitation facility, though calling it that feels slightly misleading. The building stands alone, far from any nearby town, surrounded by land that feels untouched and almost abandoned. The place looks clean on the surface, but there is something off in its structure. Hallways stretch a bit too long, corners seem sharper than they should be, and the silence inside feels heavier than outside. It is not just a location. It feels like a presence. Whitney Peak plays Mara, another resident, and her introduction adds a different kind of energy. Unlike Elara, Mara appears calm, almost too calm. She speaks with a softness that could be comforting, but there is a layer underneath that never fully settles. The interaction between the two starts simple, but it carries a subtle tension. Neither of them fully trusts the other, even if they cannot explain why. That dynamic becomes important as the story moves forward. The facility operates under strict routines, which are introduced early on. Meals happen at fixed times, lights dim at the same hour each night, and movement outside certain areas is quietly discouraged. No one explicitly explains the rules. They are simply followed, as if questioning them is not an option. This lack of explanation creates a sense of control that feels unnatural. It raises questions without forcing them too early. Ji Min-hoon-soo's character, known only as Dr. Vance, enters with a calm authority that immediately shifts the atmosphere. He does not raise his voice or act aggressively. Instead, his control comes from certainty. Every word he speaks feels measured, as if he already knows how each person will respond. His presence adds weight to every scene he is in, even when he says very little. That quiet dominance becomes unsettling over time. As Elara begins to settle into the facility, small inconsistencies start to appear. Sounds echo differently at night, as if the building itself changes shape when no one is watching. Objects seem slightly out of place, though not enough to be obvious. These details are subtle, but they build a growing sense that something is wrong beneath the surface. The film avoids clear horror signals at this stage. It focuses on discomfort rather than fear. One of the strongest aspects of this early section is pacing. The story moves forward slowly, but it never feels stagnant. Each moment adds a new layer either to the characters or the environment. Conversations feel natural, yet they always carry an undercurrent of tension. Even silence feels intentional, as if it is hiding something just out of reach. This careful pacing keeps the audience engaged without overwhelming them too early. Elara's first night in the facility marks a shift, though it is not dramatic. She struggles to sleep, not because of noise, but because of the absence of it. The silence becomes almost oppressive, forcing her to stay alert. At one point, she hears a faint sound, something between a whisper and a distant movement. It is unclear where it comes from, and that uncertainty makes it more unsettling than any clear threat. Instead of reacting with panic, Elara tries to rationalize what she is experiencing. This choice grounds the story in reality. She checks her surroundings, listens carefully, and tries to find a logical explanation. That approach makes her feel intelligent and aware, which strengthens the connection with the audience. When a character reacts realistically, the horror becomes more effective because it feels possible. Mara's behavior during this time becomes more noticeable. She seems unaffected by the environment in a way that feels unnatural. While others show signs of discomfort, she remains steady, almost detached. Her calmness starts to feel less like strength and more like something else entirely. The film does not confirm anything, but it plants enough doubt to keep the audience questioning her role. Dr. Vance continues to observe everything without appearing intrusive. His interactions with the residents are controlled and precise. He asks questions that seem simple, but they often lead to deeper discomfort. It becomes clear that he is not just treating them, he is studying them. That shift changes how his character is perceived, turning him from a guide into something more ambiguous. The environment outside the facility also plays a key role, even in these early stages. The land feels empty, but not peaceful. Wind moves through the space in a way that sounds almost deliberate, as if it is carrying something unseen. The camera lingers on these moments, allowing the atmosphere to build naturally. It creates a sense that the threat is not limited to the building itself. One detail that stands out is how the film handles time. Days seem to pass normally, but nights feel stretched, almost distorted. This contrast adds to the sense that something is interfering with reality. It is not explained directly, but it becomes noticeable through repetition. The audience begins to feel that same distortion, which strengthens immersion. Elara's internal struggle becomes more visible as she spends more time in this environment. She begins to question her own perception, unsure if what she is experiencing is real or imagined. This psychological angle adds depth to the horror. It is not just about external threats. It is about losing trust in your own mind, which is far more unsettling. The interactions between Elara and Mara start to carry more weight as small details begin to connect. Their conversations become slightly more tense, with pauses that feel intentional. There is a sense that both of them are holding back information, though neither is ready to reveal it. This builds anticipation without rushing into conflict. By the end of this opening section, the film has established its core elements without revealing too much. The setting feels alive, the characters feel layered, and the tension continues to grow. Nothing has fully broken yet, but the cracks are clearly there. That restraint is what makes the build-up effective. It prepares the audience for what is coming without giving it away too early. The strongest takeaway from this first part is how controlled everything feels. Every scene has purpose, every detail adds to the atmosphere, and every character interaction pushes the story forward. There is no wasted movement, no unnecessary dialogue. It creates a tight, focused experience that draws you in without forcing attention. At this point, the story is still holding back its true nature, but the pressure is building. The sense of isolation is stronger, the characters are becoming more complex, and the environment is starting to feel unpredictable. The film has laid the groundwork carefully, setting up a situation that feels stable on the surface but unstable underneath. And that is where things start to shift. The shift does not arrive with a loud moment or a sudden shock. It builds through small changes that feel almost easy to ignore at first. Elara wakes up the next morning with a strange sense that time has slipped slightly out of place. Nothing around her looks different, yet everything feels just a fraction off. The light coming through the window seems dimmer than it should be, and the air inside the room feels heavier, like it has not moved in hours. She follows the routine like everyone else, heading toward the dining area where the residents gather in near silence. Conversations happen, but they feel controlled, almost rehearsed. People speak in short sentences, avoiding anything personal or emotional. It creates a strange rhythm where words exist, but connection does not. Elara notices this quickly, and instead of joining in, she chooses to observe. Mara is already seated, her posture relaxed, her expression neutral. She greets Elara with a small nod, but there is something distant in her eyes, like she is focused on something beyond the room. Their interaction is brief, yet it carries a weight that lingers. Elara tries to read her, searching for any sign of what she might be thinking, but Mara reveals nothing. That lack of clarity becomes more unsettling than any direct threat. Dr. Vance enters shortly after, and the room shifts almost immediately. The quiet becomes more structured, as if his presence reinforces the unspoken rules. He begins the session with simple questions, asking each resident about their sleep, their thoughts, their emotional state. The questions sound routine, but the way he listens makes them feel like something more. He studies reactions, pauses, even the tone of each answer. When it is Elara's turn, she answers carefully, choosing her words with precision. She mentions the difficulty sleeping, the strange silence, but she avoids sounding alarmed. Dr. Vance listens without interruption, his gaze steady, his expression unreadable. When she finishes, he nods slightly, as if confirming something he already suspected. He does not offer reassurance. He simply moves on. That moment lingers with Elara long after the session ends. It is not what was said that unsettles her. It is what was not said. There is a sense that her experience is not new, that it fits into something larger she does not yet understand. This realization plants a quiet fear, one that grows without needing a clear reason. As the day progresses, the facility begins to reveal more of its structure. Elara is guided through different sections, each one serving a specific purpose. Therapy rooms, observation spaces, restricted corridors that are casually mentioned but never fully explained. The layout feels intentional, almost strategic, as if every area is designed to control movement and perception. One hallway stands out more than the others. It stretches longer than expected, with identical doors lining each side. The lighting flickers slightly, not enough to draw attention, but enough to create a subtle discomfort. Elara slows down as she walks through it, her senses sharpening. There is a faint sound, something rhythmic, almost like a distant tapping, but it stops the moment she tries to focus on it. She reaches the end of the hallway and pauses, unsure why it unsettles her more than the rest of the facility. Nothing visibly threatens her, yet the feeling remains. It is a quiet reminder that not everything here operates on logic. Some parts of this place exist outside of normal understanding, and that realization begins to settle in. Later, during a group session, the tone shifts slightly. Dr. Vance encourages the residents to share personal experiences, pushing them to open up in ways they have avoided so far. The atmosphere becomes tense as each person struggles to decide how much to reveal. When Mara finally speaks, The room seems to tighten around her words. She talks about a memory that feels incomplete, describing moments that do not connect in a logical way. Her voice remains calm, but the content carries a strange weight. It is not what she says directly. It is what exists between her sentences. There are gaps, missing pieces that feel intentional. As she speaks, Ilara notices something unsettling. Mar does not look at anyone while talking. Her gaze stays fixed on a point that does not exist. Dr. Vance listens closely, more engaged than before. He asks follow-up questions that seem simple, yet they push Mara into uncomfortable territory. Instead of resisting, she answers without hesitation, as if she has accepted whatever this process is leading to. That willingness creates a contrast with the rest of the group, who remain guarded and uncertain. Ilara begins to feel a growing divide between herself and the others. It is not just about trust. It is about awareness. Some of them seem to understand more than they let on, while others appear completely lost. She is somewhere in between, aware enough to question things, but not enough to find answers. That position becomes increasingly frustrating. As evening approaches, the tension builds in subtle ways. The light outside fades faster than expected, casting longer shadows across the facility. The temperature drops slightly, though no one acknowledges it. Small details begin to stack on top of each other, creating a sense that the environment is shifting again. Ilara decides to explore further, moving beyond the areas she has already seen. She does not act impulsively. Every step is careful, measured, as if she is aware that she is being watched. The facility feels different at this hour, quieter but not calmer. The silence now carries a different tone, one that feels more active, almost aware. She returns to the long hallway, drawn to it without fully understanding why. This time, the atmosphere feels heavier. The faint tapping sound returns, slightly louder, though still distant. It does not follow a clear pattern, which makes it harder to ignore. Ilara moves slowly, her focus narrowing as she tries to locate its source. Halfway down the corridor, she notices one of the doors slightly open. It is a small detail, but it stands out immediately. Every other door is closed, perfectly aligned, yet this one breaks that pattern. She hesitates, her instincts warning her to step back, but curiosity pushes her forward. As she reaches the door, the sound stops completely. That sudden silence feels louder than anything she has heard so far. It fills the space, pressing against her senses, making it difficult to think clearly. She places her hand on the door, pausing for a moment before pushing it open just enough to see inside. The room is empty. At first, nothing seems unusual. It looks like every other room in the facility, clean, minimal, almost sterile. But as she steps inside, something changes. The air feels colder, sharper, as if the space itself reacts to her presence. She looks around, searching for anything that might explain what she heard, but there is nothing obvious. Then she notices the walls. They are not completely smooth. There are faint marks, almost invisible unless you look closely. Lines that seem random at first, but start to form patterns the longer she studies them. They are not deep enough to be damaged, but they are too deliberate to be accidental. The shapes do not make sense, yet they feel intentional, like a message written in a language she does not understand. Ilara steps back, her mind racing as she tries to process what she is seeing. The logical part of her searches for a simple explanation, but nothing fits. The marks are too precise, too consistent. They were made by someone, but for what purpose remains unclear. A sound echoes from the hallway. This time, it is closer. Ilara turns quickly, her focus snapping back to the present. The tapping returns, but it has changed. It is no longer distant. It feels like it is moving, shifting from one point to another without a clear direction. The unpredictability makes it more unsettling, forcing her to stay alert. She steps out of the room, her senses heightened, her movements cautious. The hallway stretches in both directions, empty and still, yet the sound continues. It does not match the environment. It feels separate, like something existing alongside reality rather than within it. For a brief moment, she considers calling out, breaking the silence, but she stops herself. Something about this place suggests that noise might make things worse. Instead, she listens, trying to understand the pattern behind the sound, searching for any clue that might ground it in reality. But there is none. The tapping continues, shifting, changing, refusing to settle into anything predictable. It creates a tension that builds with each second, pushing Elara closer to a decision she is not ready to make. Stay and confront it, or leave and pretend it never happened. Before she can choose, the lights flicker. Just once. But it is enough. The entire hallway seems to shift for a split second, like a frame missing from reality. It is subtle, almost impossible to confirm, yet it leaves a lasting impact. Elara feels it more than she sees it, a brief distortion that shakes her sense of control. When the lights stabilize, the sound is gone. Completely. The silence returns, but it feels different now. It is no longer empty. It carries the memory of what just happened, making it heavier, more oppressive. Elara stands still, her mind struggling to catch up, her instincts telling her that something has changed in a way she cannot yet understand. And for the first time, she realizes that whatever is happening here is not just around her. It might already be affecting her. Sleep does not come easily that night, and when it does, it feels shallow, almost artificial. Elara drifts in and out of it, caught between awareness and something that feels like forced rest. Each time she closes her eyes, there is a sense that her mind does not fully shut down. Thoughts continue moving, fragments of sound and image blending together without forming anything clear. It creates a strange tension where even rest feels like effort. At some point, she wakes again, but this time something is different. The room feels slightly altered, though nothing has physically changed. The darkness carries a density that was not there before, pressing against the edges of her vision. She sits up slowly, listening, expecting the faint tapping to return, but instead there is something else. A low hum, barely audible, but steady enough to notice. It does not come from a single direction. It feels embedded in the space itself. Elara stays still, focusing on the sound, trying to understand its source. It does not fluctuate or fade. It continues with a quiet consistency that makes it more unsettling. Sounds that behave predictably can be explained. This one refuses to offer that comfort. It simply exists, constant and unchanging. She gets out of bed, her movements slow, careful not to create unnecessary noise. The floor feels colder than before, sending a sharp sensation through her body with each step. She moves toward the door, pausing before opening it, as if expecting resistance. When it opens without effort, the normalcy of that action feels almost strange. The hallway outside is empty, but it does not feel abandoned. There is a presence in the stillness, something that lingers without showing itself. The lighting remains stable, yet the shadows seem slightly deeper, stretching in ways that do not match the structure. Elara steps out, her attention shifting between the visible and the unseen. The low hum follows her. That realization changes everything. It confirms that the sound is not tied to a specific location. It moves with her, or perhaps it reacts to her. The uncertainty creates a new layer of tension, one that feels more personal than anything she has experienced so far. She walks slowly, her breathing controlled, her focus sharp. The facility at night feels different from before, not just quieter, but altered in a way that is difficult to define. Familiar spaces seem slightly unfamiliar, as if their dimensions have shifted just enough to disrupt recognition. It is not dramatic, but it is enough to create doubt. As she moves deeper into the corridor, she notices something ahead. A figure. At first, it appears to be standing still, partially hidden by shadow. Elara stops immediately, her body tensing as she tries to process what she is seeing. The figure does not move, does not react, but its presence feels undeniable. It stands at the far end of the hallway, just within view, yet far enough to remain unclear. She narrows her focus, trying to identify who it might be. The shape suggests a person, but there are no defining features, no movement to confirm it. The stillness becomes unsettling, stretching the moment longer than it should last. It feels like time has slowed, forcing her to remain in that uncertainty. Then, without warning, the lights flicker again. This time, it lasts longer. For a brief second, the hallway is swallowed by darkness, and when the light returns, the figure is gone. Ilara does not move. Her mind tries to catch up, to find a logical explanation, but the sequence of events does not align with anything reasonable. There was no sound of movement, no indication of where the figure went. It simply disappeared, leaving behind a space that now feels even more unsettling. The hum continues. She turns slowly, scanning the hallway behind her, half expecting to find the figure closer than before. But there is nothing. Just the same empty corridor, the same distorted stillness. The absence of confirmation becomes its own form of tension, forcing her to question what she saw. Instead of retreating, she moves forward. The decision feels instinctive, almost automatic, as if something is pulling her deeper into the space rather than pushing her away. Each step feels heavier, not physically, but mentally, as if the environment itself is resisting her presence. The air grows colder, sharper, and the hum becomes slightly louder, though still controlled. She reaches the end of the hallway, the same place where she saw the figure moments ago. There is no sign of anyone being there. No open doors, no disturbed objects, nothing that suggests recent movement. The space remains untouched, yet it feels charged with something unseen. Ilara turns toward a nearby door, one she does not remember noticing before. It blends into the wall, almost hidden in plain sight. There is no marking, no indication of what lies beyond it. That lack of information makes it stand out more than anything else. She hesitates, her hand hovering near the handle. The hum shifts. It becomes slightly uneven, breaking its steady rhythm for the first time. That change is subtle, but it is enough to signal that something is reacting. Whether it is to her presence or her decision remains unclear, but the connection feels immediate. She opens the door. The room inside is darker than the hallway, the light from outside barely reaching beyond the entrance. Ilara steps in slowly, allowing her eyes to adjust. The space feels different from the others, less structured, less controlled. It lacks the clean, precise design of the rest of the facility. Instead, it feels raw, almost unfinished. The walls carry the same faint markings she saw earlier, but here they are more visible, more deliberate. They cover larger sections, forming patterns that almost resemble symbols. The shapes still do not make sense, but they feel more intentional, as if they serve a purpose beyond decoration. Ilara moves closer, her focus narrowing as she studies them. There is a strange familiarity to the patterns, something that feels just out of reach of recognition. The hum grows louder. It no longer blends into the background. It becomes a presence, filling the room, pressing against her senses. Ilara steps back slightly, her breathing changing as the sound intensifies. It feels closer now, more concentrated, as if it is coming from within the space rather than around it. Then she hears something else. A whisper. Not clear words, not even a full sound, but something that carries the shape of language. It moves through the room without a clear direction, brushing against her awareness without settling into anything she can understand. The effect is immediate. It breaks her focus, pulling her away from the markings and into something more unsettling. She turns, searching for the source, but there is nothing. The room remains empty, yet the whisper continues. It shifts slightly, rising and falling in a way that suggests intention. It is not random noise. It feels directed, though not necessarily at her. That distinction creates a new kind of tension, one that is harder to define. It is not about being watched. It is about being included in something she does not understand. Ilara steps toward the center of the room, her instincts conflicting with each other. Part of her wants to leave, to return to a space that feels more stable. But another part pushes her forward, driven by a need to understand what is happening. That internal conflict becomes visible in her movements, hesitant yet determined. The markings on the walls begin to feel different. Not physically, but perceptually. The longer she looks at them, the more they seem to shift, not in position, but in meaning. Patterns that once appeared random start to suggest structure. Shapes begin to connect in ways that feel intentional. It is subtle, but it creates a sense that the room is not static. It responds, adapts, or perhaps reveals itself gradually. The whisper grows slightly clearer. Still not enough to understand, but enough to confirm that it carries a rhythm. It almost sounds like repetition, as if something is being said over and over, just beyond comprehension. That repetition builds tension, creating a loop that feels impossible to break. Ilara closes her eyes for a moment, trying to reset her senses, to separate reality from perception. But when she opens them again, the room feels even more intense. The hum, the whisper, the markings, everything seems to align in a way that feels deliberate. Then it stops. All of it. The hum disappears instantly, the whisper cuts off, and the room falls into complete silence. The sudden absence is overwhelming. Ilara stands frozen, her mind struggling to adjust to the shift. The silence feels louder than the noise that came before it, filling the space with a pressure that is hard to describe. It is not relief. It is something else entirely. The pause. A break. Or something waiting. She takes a step back, her instincts finally taking control. Whatever this place is, whatever it is doing, it is not something she can understand by staying here. Not yet. The realization settles in quickly, bringing with it a sense of urgency that was not there before. As she turns to leave, she notices something new. On the wall closest to the door, one of the markings has changed. It is not dramatic, not obvious, but it is different enough to stand out. A new line, slightly deeper than the others, as if it has just been added. The shape does not match the rest, breaking the pattern in a way that feels intentional. Ilara stares at it for a moment, her thoughts racing. Then she leaves. The hallway outside feels almost normal in comparison, but the tension does not fade. It follows her, lingering in her movements, her breathing, her awareness. Whatever she experienced in that room does not stay behind. It comes with her. And now, there is no way to ignore it. Morning arrives, but it does not feel like a reset. The light seeps into the room slowly, dull and uneven, as if it struggles to fully settle. Ilara opens her eyes with a lingering sense of pressure in her chest, the kind that does not fade even after she sits up and forces herself to focus. There is no clear memory of when she finally fell asleep. It feels less like rest and more like a break in awareness. For a few seconds, she stays still, trying to measure the room against what she remembers from the night before. Everything looks the same. The walls, the door, the window, all unchanged. Yet the feeling remains that something has shifted in a way she cannot see. That quiet disconnect follows her as she gets up, moving through the motions of the morning routine with a sense of distance from herself. When she steps into the hallway, the atmosphere feels controlled again. The hum is gone, the shadows behave normally, and the structure of the space returns to something more predictable. It almost feels staged, as if the facility has corrected itself. That contrast unsettles her more than the events of the night. It suggests that whatever happened is not random. It has boundaries, limits that operate on their own terms. The dining area is already active when she arrives. Residents sit in their usual places, their behavior calm, almost synchronized. The conversations are the same as before, short, measured, lacking any real depth. It is as if the night never happened, as if the environment has reset along with them. Ilara studies their faces, searching for any sign that someone else experienced what she did, but there is nothing. Mara sits across from her again, her expression unchanged, her posture relaxed. There is a faint trace of something behind her eyes, but it disappears too quickly to identify. When their eyes meet, Mara offers a small, knowing look, not a smile, not a greeting, just a brief acknowledgement. It lasts only a second, but it carries weight. It suggests awareness without confirmation. Ilara leans slightly forward, lowering her voice as she speaks. She asks a simple question, careful not to reveal too much. "Did you hear anything last night?" Mara pauses just for a moment before responding. Her answer is calm, almost casual. She says she slept well, that nothing disturbed her. The tone is steady, but it feels practiced, like a response she has used before. That answer does not settle anything. If anything, it creates more tension. Ilara studies her for a second longer, trying to find a crack in that calm surface, but there is nothing obvious. Mara returns to her meal, her focus shifting away as if the conversation has already ended. The lack of engagement feels intentional, reinforcing the idea that some things are not meant to be discussed openly. Dr. Vance enters shortly after, his presence bringing the same quiet control as before. The room adjusts to him without effort, the subtle noise fading into a more structured silence. He begins the session with the same routine, but there is a slight difference in his approach. His attention lingers longer on certain individuals, his questions digging just a bit deeper. When his focus turns to Ilara, the shift becomes clear. He asks about her night, his tone neutral, but his gaze more focused than before. Ilara answers carefully, choosing to share only part of the truth. She mentions difficulty sleeping, a sense of unease, but leaves out the details that feel impossible to explain. It is not just caution. It is instinct. Dr. Vance listens, his expression unchanged, but there is a subtle pause before he responds. He acknowledges her experience, framing it as part of an adjustment period. The explanation sounds reasonable on the surface, but it feels incomplete. It lacks the depth that the situation demands. That gap creates doubt, making it difficult to trust his words. Instead of pressing further, he moves on, shifting his attention to the rest of the group. But the moment leaves a mark. Ilara senses that he knows more than he is saying, that her experience fits into something he understands but chooses not to reveal. That realization adds a new layer to his character, turning him into something more controlled, more calculated. The session continues, but Ilara's focus drifts. Her attention moves between the room and her thoughts, trying to piece together what she experienced. The markings, the hum, the whisper, all of it feels too specific to be dismissed as imagination. Yet there is no confirmation, no external validation. That isolation makes it harder to hold on to certainty. After the session ends, she decides to approach the situation differently. Instead of reacting, she begins to observe more carefully. She pays attention to patterns, to behavior, to the small details that others might ignore. The facility is not chaotic. It operates with precision. That means there are rules, even if they are not visible. She notices that certain doors are never used during the day. Hallways that felt accessible at night are subtly avoided, either through routine or unspoken agreement. Staff members move through the space with quiet efficiency, never lingering longer than necessary. Every action feels intentional, as if guided by a structure that exists beneath the surface. Mara's behavior becomes a key point of focus. Throughout the day, she remains consistent, calm, controlled, never reacting in a way that draws attention. But there are moments, brief and easy to miss, where that control slips. A pause that lasts slightly too long, a glance that lingers on a specific area, a shift in posture that suggests tension. Ilara begins to follow those moments, tracking them without making it obvious. She notices that Mara's attention often drifts toward the same direction, a specific section of the facility that has not been fully explored. It is subtle but consistent enough to stand out. That pattern creates a new question, one that feels more grounded than the others. Later in the afternoon, Ilara finds an opportunity. Mara steps away from the group, moving toward that same section. The movement is casual, unremarkable, but it aligns with the pattern Ilara has been watching. Without hesitation, Ilara follows, keeping her distance, careful not to draw attention. The decision feels calculated, driven by observation rather than impulse. The path leads to a quieter part of the facility, one that feels less structured than the main areas. The lighting is slightly dimmer, the air heavier, carrying a sense of stillness that feels familiar. It is not as intense as the room from the night before, but it carries the same underlying tone. Mara stops near a closed door, one that looks no different from the others, yet feels distinct. She stands there for a moment, not touching it, not interacting with it, just observing. The stillness of that moment stretches longer than expected, creating a tension that feels deliberate. Ilara watches from a distance, her focus locked on Mara's behavior. There is something in the way she stands, in the way she breathes, that suggests anticipation. Not fear, not hesitation, but something closer to expectation. It is as if she knows something is about to happen, even if she does not control it. After a few seconds, Mara turns and walks away. Just like that. No explanation, no action, no clear reason for stopping there in the first place. The simplicity of that movement makes it more unsettling. It suggests that the purpose was not external. It was internal, something connected to her understanding of the space rather than anything visible. Elara approaches the door once Mara is gone, her curiosity now fully engaged. She stands in the same spot, trying to feel what Mara might have felt. At first, there is nothing. Just the same quiet, controlled environment. But as she focuses, something begins to shift. A faint vibration. Not a sound, not quite a movement, but something in between. It runs through the surface of the door, subtle but present, like a pulse that exists beneath the material. Elara places her hand against it, her senses sharpening as she tries to understand it. The vibration is steady, controlled, but it does not feel mechanical. It feels organic, in a way that is difficult to explain. Her mind immediately connects it to the hum from the night before. That realization hits with clarity. This is not random. It is connected. The facility, the sounds, the markings, the behavior, all of it forms a pattern that is slowly revealing itself. Not through explanation, but through experience. Each moment adds a piece, building towards something that is still out of reach, but getting closer. Elara steps back, her thoughts racing as the implications settle in. Whatever this place is, it operates on a system that blends physical and psychological elements in a way that blurs the line between them. It is not just affecting the environment, it is affecting perception. And that makes it far more dangerous. She turns away from the door, her focus shifting toward what comes next. The uncertainty is still there, but it is no longer directionless. It has shape now, a structure that she can begin to follow. The fear does not disappear, but it becomes more focused, more controlled. As she walks back toward the main area, one thought stays with her. This place is not hiding something. It is slowly revealing it. And she is already part of that process. By the time evening settles in again, Elara no longer feels like a passive observer. The uncertainty is still there, but it has shifted into something more active, more deliberate. She is no longer waiting for things to happen. She is watching, tracking, connecting pieces that others either ignore or accept without question. That change in mindset creates a quiet tension within her, one that pushes her forward even when instinct tells her to step back. The facility moves through its routine as expected, but now the repetition feels less comforting and more calculated. Every action appears placed, every interaction shaped by something unseen. Even the smallest details start to carry meaning. The way a door closes, the timing of footsteps in the hallway, the exact moment the lights dim. It all feels coordinated in a way that suggests design rather than coincidence. During dinner, the atmosphere feels tighter than before. Conversations are shorter, more restrained, as if the space itself is limiting what can be said. Elara notices that fewer people are speaking, and those who do keep their voices low, almost cautious. There is a shared awareness in the room, something unspoken but clearly present. It is not fear in the usual sense. It feels more like anticipation. Mara sits across from her again, but this time there is a visible shift. Her calm exterior remains, but it feels thinner, like something underneath is pressing closer to the surface. She avoids eye contact more than usual, her focus drifting toward the edges of the room. It is subtle, but it stands out to Elara, who has started to recognize patterns in her behavior. Elara decides to push slightly, testing the boundary that has formed between them. She brings up the structure of the facility, framing it as curiosity rather than suspicion. Her tone remains steady, but her words are more direct than before. She asks about the restricted areas, about the parts of the building that no one talks about. Mara pauses. It is not a long pause, but it is enough to confirm that the question matters. When she responds, her voice is softer, more measured than usual. She does not deny anything, but she does not confirm it either. Instead, she speaks in a way that feels intentionally vague, as if the answer exists but cannot be said directly. She mentions that some things here are better understood over time, that pushing too quickly can make things worse. That response does not provide clarity, but it changes the tone of their interaction. It suggests that Mara is aware of more than she admits, and that her silence is a choice rather than a lack of knowledge. That realization adds weight to everything she does, making even her smallest actions feel intentional. After dinner, the residents are guided back toward their rooms earlier than before. The shift in schedule is subtle but noticeable. No explanation is given, yet no one questions it. The compliance feels automatic, reinforcing the idea that the routine is not just habit. It is conditioning. Ilara moves along with the group, but her focus remains sharp. She pays attention to the staff, to the way they position themselves, to how they guide movement without appearing forceful. It is a controlled environment, but the control is almost invisible. That makes it more effective and more dangerous. When she reaches her room, she does not go inside immediately. Instead, she lingers in the hallway, listening, observing the space as it settles into silence. There is a moment, brief but clear, where everything feels suspended. No movement, no sound, just stillness. Then slowly the shift begins. It starts with the air. A slight change in pressure, almost unnoticeable, but enough to create discomfort. The temperature drops again, sharper this time, cutting through the stillness. Ilara remains where she is, her senses fully engaged, waiting to see what follows. The lights dim. Not abruptly, but gradually, as if something is draining the space of its clarity. Shadows deepen, stretching along the walls in ways that feel unnatural. The familiar structure of the hallway begins to blur, not physically, but perceptually. Edges soften, distances feel slightly altered. And then the sound returns. The hum. This time, it is stronger. It does not ease into the environment. It takes hold of it. Ilara feels it immediately, not just as a sound, but as a vibration that runs through her body. It is deeper than before, more present, impossible to ignore. The connection becomes clear. This is not background noise. It is a signal, a function of whatever is happening within this place. She steps away from her door, moving slowly into the hallway. There is no hesitation now, only focus. The fear remains, but it has been replaced by something more controlled. A need to understand, even if that understanding comes at a cost. As she walks, the environment continues to shift. The hallway feels longer. Not dramatically, but enough to create doubt. The distance between doors seems stretched, the spacing slightly off. It forces her to question her perception, to wonder if the change is real or internal. That uncertainty becomes part of the experience, making each step feel less stable. She reaches the intersection where the long corridor begins. The same one from before. But now, it feels different. The lighting flickers faintly, not enough to plunge the space into darkness, but enough to disrupt continuity. The shadows along the walls appear thicker, almost layered. The air carries a weight that presses down on everything, making movement feel slower, more deliberate. Ilara steps into the corridor. The hum intensifies. It pulses now, not in a steady rhythm, but in waves that rise and fall without pattern. Each pulse creates a subtle distortion, a moment where the space feels like it shifts slightly out of alignment. It is not visible in a direct way, but it is felt, deeply and unmistakably. Halfway down the hallway, she stops. There is something ahead. At first, it is just a shape, barely defined, blending into the shadows. But as the light flickers again, it becomes clearer. A figure, standing in the center of the corridor, facing away from her. It does not move, does not react, but its presence is undeniable. Ilara's breath slows. Her focus sharpens. This time, she does not question what she is seeing. She knows it is there. She takes a step forward. The figure remains still. Another step. No movement. The distance between them feels longer than it should be, each step taking more effort than expected. The space resists her, not physically, but perceptually. It feels like she is moving through something dense, something that pushes back without touching her. The hum grows louder. It wraps around the moment, filling the space with a pressure that is almost overwhelming. Ilara continues forward, her attention locked on the figure. There is no sound of breathing, no shift in posture, nothing to confirm that it is human. Just stillness. When she is close enough, she stops again. The figure is clearer now, but still lacks detail. It is defined by shape rather than features, its outline sharp against the distorted background. There is something wrong with it, something that does not align with the environment. Ilara reaches out. Her hand moves slowly, cautiously, as if expecting resistance. Just before she makes contact, the lights cut out. Complete darkness. The hum peaks. For a single second, everything feels suspended. Then the lights return. The corridor is empty. The figure is gone. Ilara stands alone, her hands still extended, her mind struggling to process the sudden absence. There is no transition, no movement, no explanation. It is as if the figure never existed, yet the space it occupied still feels different. The hum fades slightly, but it does not disappear. It lingers. She lowers her hand, her breathing uneven now, her control slipping just enough to reveal the tension beneath. This is no longer something she can observe from a distance. It is direct. It is immediate. And it is escalating. As she turns, preparing to move back, she notices something behind her. The walls. The markings. They are no longer faint. They are visible, clear, stretching along the corridor in patterns that were not there before. The same shapes she saw in the hidden room, now present in the open space, integrated into the structure itself. That change confirms what she has been sensing. This is spreading, not contained, not controlled. The environment is evolving, revealing more of itself with each passing moment. And whatever is driving it is not slowing down. Ilara steps back, her awareness expanding as the implications settle in. The boundary between the hidden and the visible is breaking. What was once confined to specific spaces is now reaching beyond them, altering the entire facility. And she is standing in the middle of it. The hum pulses again, softer this time, but steady, like a signal or a warning. Ilara does not move immediately after the figure disappears, because the absence itself feels like an event that needs to be understood before anything else can happen. Her eyes remain fixed on the space where it stood, as if expecting it to return the moment she looks away, but nothing shifts, nothing flickers, and nothing confirms what just happened beyond the weight it leaves behind. The hum continues at a lower intensity, no longer overwhelming but still present enough to remind her that whatever controls this place has not stopped. It has only adjusted. Her breathing slows gradually, not because the fear is gone, but because she is forcing herself to regain control before making her next move. She lowers her hand and takes a step back, and this time the corridor responds differently, no longer stretching or resisting in the same way it did before. The space stabilizes, but that stability does not bring comfort. It feels more like a reset, as if the environment has completed a phase and is preparing for the next. The markings along the walls remain visible, no longer faint or hidden, and their presence changes the entire perception of the hallway. What once looked clean and controlled now feels layered, as if something has been exposed rather than added. As Ilara turns to walk back, her attention shifts between the walls and the path ahead, trying to understand whether the change is permanent or temporary. The markings do not move, but they do not feel static either, because the longer she looks at them, the more they seem to suggest structure rather than randomness. Shapes begin to align in her mind, not clearly enough to decode, but enough to feel intentional. This is no longer something she can dismiss as damage or coincidence. It is communication, or at least the attempt of it. When she reaches the end of the corridor, the transition into the main hallway feels sharper than before, almost like stepping between two separate environments. The hum fades further, becoming a distant presence rather than a dominant force, and the lighting stabilizes into something more consistent. Yet even here, the sense of normalcy feels artificial, like a layer placed over something more unstable beneath it. Ilara pauses, glancing back once more at the corridor, and for a brief second, the markings seem less visible, as if they are retreating or being concealed again. That moment confirms something important to her, which is that whatever is happening does not operate in a constant state. It shifts, it reveals, and then it hides, almost like a system that cycles through phases. This realization changes how she approaches everything, because it means there is a pattern, and patterns can be studied. The fear does not disappear, but it becomes more focused, less chaotic, and that focus allows her to think more clearly. As she continues walking, she begins to notice something else, which is the absence of other residents. The hallway is completely empty, not just quiet, but empty in a way that feels deliberate. There are no footsteps, no distant voices, no movement behind closed doors, and that silence carries a different kind of tension than before. It is not passive, it feels controlled, as if everyone has been placed exactly where they are supposed to be. When she reaches her room, she hesitates before entering, because the idea of closing herself into a single space now feels more unsettling than being in the open hallway. Still, she steps inside, leaving the door slightly open, not enough to draw attention, but enough to maintain a connection to the outside. The room appears unchanged, but the familiarity no longer provides comfort, because she has already seen how easily perception can shift. She sits on the edge of the bed, her thoughts moving quickly as she tries to organize everything she has experienced so far, but each attempt to create a clear sequence breaks apart under the weight of uncertainty. The figure, the hum, the markings, the shifting space, none of it fits into a simple explanation, yet all of it feels connected in a way that is becoming harder to ignore. The strongest realization is that this is not random, it is structured, and that structure is becoming more visible with each passing moment. A faint sound pulls her attention back toward the hallway, and this time it is not the hum, but something lighter, more irregular, like footsteps moving at a distance. She remains still, listening carefully, trying to determine the direction, but the sound does not behave in a predictable way. It fades, returns, shifts position without following a clear path, making it difficult to track. That unpredictability creates a new kind of tension, one that feels less controlled than the hum, but no less intentional. Ilara stands slowly and moves toward the door, her focus narrowing as she listens again, and this time the sound is slightly clearer, just enough to confirm that it is not coming from a single source. It feels layered, as if multiple movements are happening at once, overlapping in a way that creates confusion rather than clarity. She steps into the hallway, her posture tense but controlled, ready to react if something changes suddenly. The corridor remains empty, but the sound continues, echoing faintly through the space, and as she listens more closely, she realizes that it is not just footsteps, there are pauses within it, moments where the movement stops entirely before starting again. That rhythm feels deliberate, almost like a signal, though she cannot yet understand what it means. The connection between this and the hum is not clear, but it feels like part of the same system. She begins to walk in the direction of the sound, her pace steady, her attention fully engaged, and as she moves further away from her room, the environment starts to shift again, though more subtly than before. The lighting dims slightly, the air grows colder, and the sense of space becomes less reliable, not enough to disorient her completely, but enough to keep her on edge. Each step feels like a transition into something deeper, something less controlled. As she turns a corner, she sees movement ahead, not a clear figure this time, but a shadow crossing the far end of the hallway, quick and indistinct. She stops immediately, her body reacting before her mind can process it, and the silence that follows feels heavier than anything she has experienced so far. The sound disappears completely, leaving behind a space that feels charged with something unseen. Ilara waits, her eyes fixed on the area where the movement occurred, but nothing follows, no confirmation, no repetition, just stillness. That lack of continuation creates doubt, making her question whether what she saw was real or another distortion. But the tension in her body tells her otherwise, because it is not reacting to uncertainty, it is reacting to something that felt present, even if only for a second. She moves forward again, slower this time, her senses fully alert, and as she reaches the end of the hallway, she notices a door slightly ajar, one that she does not remember seeing before. The gap is small, just enough to suggest that it was not closed properly, but in this environment, even that small detail feels significant. She approaches it carefully, her attention shifting between the door and the surrounding space, as if expecting something to react to her movement. When she reaches it, she pauses, listening one last time, but the silence holds, offering no warning and no guidance. Slowly, she pushes the door open, just enough to look inside, and what she sees immediately disrupts her sense of structure. The room is not arranged like the others, not clean or minimal, but cluttered, uneven, almost chaotic in comparison. Objects are placed without clear order, surfaces are marked with deeper, more aggressive patterns, and the air inside feels heavier, more concentrated. She steps in cautiously, her eyes scanning the space, and the first thing she notices is that the markings here are not just on the walls. They cover the floor, the ceiling, every surface that can hold them. They are darker, more defined, and arranged in a way that suggests progression rather than randomness. It feels like this room is not just part of the system, but a core element of it. The moment she fully enters, the faint hum returns, not as strong as before, but present enough to confirm that this space is connected to whatever drives the phenomenon. Ilara stands still, her attention locked on the patterns around her, and for the first time, there is a sense that she is not just observing something, but standing inside it. Ilara remains still for several seconds after stepping into the room, not out of hesitation, but because the space demands attention in a way that feels almost forceful. Her eyes move slowly across the walls, then the floor, then the ceiling, taking in the density of the markings that now surround her from every direction. Unlike the earlier room, where the patterns felt distant and incomplete, this place feels concentrated, as if multiple layers of the same language have been pressed together over time. The air carries a weight that is not just physical, but perceptual, making it harder to separate what she sees from what she feels. The hum settles into a steady presence again, not overwhelming, but constant enough to shape the atmosphere of the room. It feels less like a sound now and more like a condition of the space, something that exists whether she focuses on it or not. Ilara takes a slow step forward, then another, testing how the room responds to her movement, and this time there is no distortion, no shift in distance or structure. That stability feels intentional, almost controlled, as if this room operates under different rules than the rest of the facility. As she moves further inside, her attention is drawn to the center of the room, where the markings converge into a tighter formation. The patterns here are more organized, less scattered, forming shapes that feel closer to meaning than anything she has seen before. They do not form words in any language she recognizes, but they carry a rhythm, a repetition that suggests purpose. The longer she looks at them, the more they begin to feel familiar, not because she understands them, but because her mind starts to anticipate their structure. That familiarity unsettles her more than confusion would, because it suggests that whatever this is, it is not entirely foreign to her. The thought lingers just long enough to create tension before she forces herself to focus again. She crouches slightly, bringing her eyes closer to the markings on the floor, tracing the lines without touching them, as if proximity alone might reveal something new. The hum shifts. It does not grow louder or softer, but it changes in tone, becoming slightly uneven, as if reacting to her attention. Ilara notices it immediately, her focus snapping upward as she scans the room again, searching for any visible change. Nothing moves, nothing alters its position, yet the atmosphere feels different, more active, more aware of her presence. Then the whisper returns. This time, it is clearer. Still not fully understandable, but no longer abstract. There is a structure to it now, a pattern that repeats in a way that feels deliberate. The sound does not come from a single point, it moves through the room, shifting direction without warning, brushing against her awareness from different angles. It creates the impression that the space itself is producing it, rather than any one source. Ilara stands slowly, her breathing controlled but heavier now, as she tries to isolate the sound, to catch even a fragment of meaning. The repetition becomes more noticeable, a sequence that almost aligns with the patterns on the walls, as if the two are connected. That possibility pulls her deeper into focus, narrowing her attention to the point where everything else fades into the background. For a moment, she feels close to understanding something. Not clearly, not completely, but close enough to sense it. Then the connection breaks. The whisper distorts, losing its rhythm, becoming fragmented again, and the moment slips away before she can hold on to it. The frustration that follows is immediate, sharp, but it is quickly replaced by something else, which is realization. This is not random. The clarity appeared when she focused in a certain way, and it disappeared when that focus shifted. That means it can happen again. She adjusts her stance slightly, her attention returning to the markings at the center of the room, and this time she does not try to analyze them directly. Instead, she allows her focus to soften, to take in the entire pattern rather than individual lines. The effect is subtle at first, but then the whisper begins to stabilize again, its rhythm aligning more closely with what she sees. The hum follows. It deepens slightly, not louder, but more defined, as if it is locking into the same pattern. The combination of sound and structure creates a moment where the room feels synchronized, every element moving within the same system. Ilara feels it more than she understands it, a brief alignment that suggests purpose beyond her current perception. And then, something changes. One of the markings on the wall shifts. Not dramatically, not enough to be obvious, but enough to break the pattern. A single line appears slightly deeper than the others, its shape altering just enough to stand out. Ilara's eyes lock onto it immediately, her focus sharpening as she tries to confirm what she is seeing. The line moves again. This time, there is no doubt. It is not an illusion. The marking is changing, slowly, almost reluctantly, as if the surface itself is being rewritten. The movement is subtle, but it is real, and it confirms something that removes any remaining sense of normality from the situation. This space is not static. It is active. Ilara takes a step back, her control slipping slightly as the realization settles in. The markings are not just patterns, they are processes, something that can shift, adapt, respond. The idea that they might be reacting to her, or to something connected to her, creates a tension that is harder to manage. The whisper intensifies. It grows clearer, more structured, though still not fully understandable, and this time it carries a tone that feels different. It is no longer neutral. There is intention in it now, something closer to direction than repetition. Ilara feels it immediately, the sense that the sound is not just existing around her, but addressing her in a way she cannot fully process. She turns toward the wall where the marking shifted, her movements slow but deliberate, and as she gets closer, the air grows colder, sharper, carrying a density that presses against her skin. The hum deepens again, aligning with the whisper in a way that creates a layered effect, as if multiple systems are operating at once. Ilara reaches out. Her hand stops just short of the wall. Every instinct tells her that crossing that final distance will change something, though she cannot predict how. The hesitation lasts only a second, because the need to understand outweighs the fear, and slowly, carefully, she lets her fingers make contact with the surface. The reaction is immediate. The hum spikes, the whisper fractures into overlapping layers, and the markings around her pulse faintly, as if responding to the contact. The sensation that runs through her hand is not physical in the usual sense. It feels like information, like something passing through her rather than into her. She pulls her hand back quickly, her breath catching as the intensity peaks and then begins to settle. The room does not return to its previous state immediately, instead it lingers in that heightened condition for a few seconds, as if processing what just happened. Then, gradually, everything stabilizes. The hum softens, the whisper fades, and the markings stop shifting. But the change remains. The line she touched is now different from the rest, its shape altered in a way that does not match the original pattern. It stands out clearly, a new element within the structure, and its presence confirms what she felt in that moment. She did not just observe the system. She interacted with it. Ilara steps back, her mind racing as the implications settle in. If this place can respond, if it can change based on contact, then it is not just a passive environment. It is something that processes input, something that evolves through interaction. And that means she is no longer just inside it. She is part of it. The thought lands with a weight that is difficult to ignore, and for the first time, the fear shifts into something deeper than uncertainty. It becomes awareness, the understanding that whatever this system is, it has already begun to include her in its function. As she turns toward the door, preparing to leave, she notices something new at the edge of her vision. The patterns near the entrance have changed. Not all of them, just a few, but enough to confirm that the shift is spreading beyond the point of contact. The structure is adjusting, expanding, or perhaps responding to a sequence she does not yet understand. Ilara steps out of the room without hesitation this time, her focus sharp, her movements controlled, but the tension within her is stronger than before. The hallway outside feels different again, not unstable, but aware in a way that is harder to ignore. And as the door closes behind her, the hum returns, steady and low, like a signal that has already begun its next phase. The moment Ilara steps back into the hallway, the contrast between the room and the rest of the facility feels sharper than before, but it no longer brings relief. Instead, it creates a sense that the hallway itself is only pretending to be stable, as if it is holding its shape just long enough to maintain order. The hum continues at a low level, steady and controlled, no longer overwhelming but impossible to ignore. It feels like a background system that never fully shuts down, only adjusts its intensity depending on where she stands. She begins walking, not toward her room, but further down the corridor, driven by a growing awareness that returning to familiar spaces will not provide any real safety. Her steps are measured, her breathing steady, but her focus is sharper than it has ever been. Every detail now feels important, every shift in sound or light carrying potential meaning. The facility is no longer just a place. It is a structure she is trying to read. As she moves, she notices that the markings she saw earlier have not completely disappeared. They are fainter here, less defined, but still present if she looks closely enough. That partial visibility suggests a transition rather than a reset, as if the system is extending itself slowly instead of revealing everything at once. It reinforces the idea that whatever is happening is not sudden. It is gradual, controlled, and deliberate. A faint movement ahead catches her attention, not a full figure this time, but a subtle distortion, like a shadow that does not fully match the light around it. Ilara slows down immediately, her eyes narrowing as she tries to isolate what she is seeing. The shape shifts slightly, then stills, blending back into the environment in a way that makes it difficult to confirm its presence. She does not rush forward. Instead, she observes, holding her position long enough to see if it happens again. The silence stretches, the hum remaining constant, and for a moment it feels like nothing will follow. Then, just as she begins to question it, the distortion returns, this time closer, moving across the wall in a way that feels too controlled to be random. This is not the same as the figure from before. This is something else. Ilara takes a slow step forward, then another, her attention locked on the movement, and as she closes the distance, the distortion becomes slightly clearer. It does not have a defined shape, but it carries direction, a sense of motion that is not tied to any physical object. It feels like a presence moving along the surface rather than within the space. The hum shifts in response. It becomes slightly uneven, breaking its steady rhythm for just a moment before settling again. That change confirms what she is beginning to understand, which is that these movements are connected to the same system she encountered in the room. They are not separate events. They are different expressions of the same process. As she reaches the point where the distortion last appeared, she stops again, scanning the wall carefully. There is nothing visible now, no trace of movement, but the air feels different, slightly denser, as if something has just passed through. Ilara raises her hand slowly, hesitating for only a second before placing it against the wall. The surface is cold, colder than it should be. For a brief moment, nothing happens, and she considers pulling her hand away, but then the hum deepens slightly, and the sensation returns, similar to what she felt in the room, but weaker, less concentrated. It moves through her hand in a faint pulse, like a distant echo of the stronger interaction she experienced before. She pulls back, her eyes scanning the wall again, and this time she notices something new. A faint marking, barely visible, begins to form where her hand made contact. It is not immediate, and it is not as defined as the others, but it is there, emerging slowly as if the surface is responding to her presence. Ilara exhales slowly, the realization settling in with clarity. The effect is not limited to one space. It is not confined to specific rooms or hidden areas. The system extends beyond those boundaries, and her interaction with it is not an isolated event. It can happen anywhere. That thought shifts her approach again. This is no longer just about observation or reaction. It is about influence. She steps back, her mind moving quickly as she tries to understand the implications. If her presence can trigger change, then the system is not just reacting randomly. It is responding to input, processing it, and producing an outcome. That means there is a form of logic behind it, even if she cannot yet see it clearly. A sound breaks her focus. This time, it is unmistakable. A voice. Not a whisper, not fragmented, but a clear, single tone, coming from somewhere deeper within the facility. It is not loud, but it carries enough clarity to stand out immediately against the hum. Ilara turns toward it, her attention snapping into place, her body reacting before she fully processes what she heard. The voice does not repeat. It lingers for a second, then fades, leaving behind a silence that feels sharper than before. The sudden clarity of it makes it more unsettling than the whispers, because it suggests a level of control that the other sounds do not. This is not random noise. This is something intentional. Ilara moves toward the direction it came from, her pace steady but faster now, driven by a need to understand what produced that sound. The hallway narrows slightly as she moves deeper, the structure becoming less uniform, less controlled. The lighting dims again, not enough to obscure her path, but enough to create a sense of distance between what is near and what is far. As she continues, the hum begins to shift once more, not in volume, but in texture. It becomes more layered, as if multiple frequencies are overlapping, creating a more complex sound that is harder to isolate. That complexity mirrors the environment, which now feels less stable than before, though not as distorted as the corridor where she saw the figure. She reaches another intersection, one she does not remember seeing earlier, and pauses briefly to orient herself. The facility no longer feels consistent in its layout, and that inconsistency makes navigation uncertain. Still, the direction of the voice remains clear in her mind, guiding her forward even without visible confirmation. As she turns the corner, she sees something that immediately stops her. A door, but not like the others. This one is marked. Not with the faint, subtle patterns she has been seeing, but with deep, deliberate lines that cut into the surface, forming a design that is more structured than anything else in the facility. The markings are darker, more defined, and arranged in a way that feels almost intentional, like a boundary rather than a pattern. Ilara approaches slowly, her attention fixed on the door, and as she gets closer, the hum begins to stabilize again, settling into a steady tone that feels almost controlled. The air around the door is colder, sharper, carrying the same density she felt in the room, but stronger, more concentrated. She stops just in front of it, her hand hovering near the surface, and for a moment, everything feels still. No movement, no sound beyond the hum, no distortion, just a pause. Then, without any warning, the voice returns. This time, it is closer. Still not fully clear, but unmistakably directed. It does not form complete words, but it carries structure, intention, and something else beneath it, something that feels almost like recognition. The effect is immediate, sending a sharp tension through her as she realizes that this is not just a sound moving through space. It is responding to her. Ilara does not pull away. Instead, she leans slightly closer, her focus narrowing, her awareness sharpening to a single point. Whatever is behind this door, whatever is producing that voice, it is more connected to the system than anything she has encountered so far. And for the first time, she feels something new. Not just fear, not just curiosity, but the sense that she is standing at the edge of something that has been waiting. Ilara keeps her hand suspended near the marked door, holding that position longer than feels natural, because the moment itself carries too much weight to rush. The surface in front of her does not move, does not react immediately, yet the air around it feels charged, as if something beneath is aware of her presence and choosing not to respond too quickly. The hum settles into a low, steady tone, almost controlled, creating a sense that this part of the facility operates with a different level of precision. Her breathing slows, not out of calm, but out of focus, as she prepares herself for whatever might happen next. The voice does not return right away, and that silence feels intentional rather than empty. It stretches the moment, forcing her to remain in that state of anticipation without offering any release. Ilara studies the markings on the door more closely, noticing that they are not random cuts or scratches, but structured lines that intersect in a way that suggests a boundary. Unlike the patterns in the other rooms, which felt like communication or process, these markings feel like restriction, something designed to hold or contain. She finally lets her fingers make contact with the surface. The reaction is immediate but controlled, not as intense as the room she entered before, but far more focused. A sharp vibration travels through the door into her hand, not spreading outward, but pulling inward, as if the surface is drawing something from her rather than pushing something into her. The hum deepens slightly, aligning with that sensation, and for a brief moment, the entire space feels centered on that single point of contact. Ilara does not pull away this time. Instead, she holds her position, allowing the sensation to continue, even as it grows more defined. It feels like pressure building beneath the surface, not enough to cause pain, but enough to create discomfort. The idea that something on the other side might be aware of this connection begins to settle in, and that thought carries a weight she cannot ignore. Then the voice returns. This time, it is not distant or fragmented. It is close. Very close. The sound seems to come from the other side of the door, but it does not behave like a normal voice. It does not echo or travel through space in a predictable way. It feels direct, as if it is reaching her without needing distance at all. The tone is low, controlled, and layered with something that feels almost familiar, though she cannot place why. The words are still not fully clear, but they are closer to forming something recognizable. There is structure now, a rhythm that suggests intention rather than randomness. Ilara leans in slightly, her focus narrowing completely, trying to catch even a single clear word, something she can hold on to. For a brief second, she almost understands it. Then it slips. The voice distorts, breaking apart into overlapping tones, and the moment of clarity disappears just as quickly as it came. The frustration hits instantly, sharper than before, because this time she was closer. That closeness makes the loss feel more significant, as if she missed something important by only a fraction. The door vibrates again. Stronger. Not violently, but with a controlled force that suggests movement beneath the surface. Ilara's hand remains pressed against it, her instincts telling her to step back, but something else keeps her in place. The need to understand outweighs the fear, even as the situation becomes more unstable. The markings on the door begin to shift. Unlike the subtle changes she saw earlier, this movement is clearer, more deliberate. Lines deepen, angles adjust, and the overall pattern begins to reorganize itself in a way that feels purposeful. It is not random change. It is transformation, guided by something she cannot yet see. Ilara watches closely, her eyes tracking the movement as the design evolves, and for the first time, it begins to resemble something structured enough to almost read. Not a language she knows, but something closer to it than anything she has seen so far. The realization hits her quickly. This is not just reacting. It is communicating. The hum intensifies slightly, reinforcing that connection, and the air around her grows colder, sharper, pressing against her skin in a way that feels almost deliberate. The environment is no longer passive. It is engaged, responding to her presence in a way that feels directed. Then, without warning, the door shifts. Not opening. Not fully. But enough. A slight movement, barely a fraction, just enough to break the seal of stillness that has held it in place. The gap is small, almost invisible at first, but it is there, and it changes everything. The moment that happens, the hum drops suddenly, not disappearing, but pulling back, as if something has been released or redirected. Ilara freezes. Her hand remains on the door, but her body locks in place as she processes what just happened. The gap in front of her feels heavier than the solid surface did before, as if it carries something behind it that does not belong in the open. The air that escapes through it is colder, sharper, and carries a density that feels different from anything she has experienced so far. The voice returns again. This time, it comes through the gap. It is still not fully clear, but it is closer than ever, almost forming words that she can recognize. The tone is no longer distant or layered. It feels singular now, focused, directed entirely at her. There is no doubt left. It knows she is there. Ilara's grip tightens slightly, not out of fear, but out of focus. Every part of her attention is locked onto that opening, onto the space beyond it that she cannot yet see. The temptation to push the door further is immediate, strong enough to override hesitation, but something holds her back. Not fear. Something else. A sense that crossing that threshold will change the situation in a way she cannot reverse. The markings on the door continue to shift, but more slowly now, as if the system is stabilizing after the initial reaction. The structure becomes more defined, the lines settling into a pattern that feels complete, or at least more complete than before. Ilara studies it carefully, trying to find any recognizable shape, any clue that might explain what lies beyond. Then she notices something that makes her pause. One section of the pattern mirrors the shape of the marking that formed when she touched the wall earlier. It is not identical, but it is close enough to confirm a connection. That realization changes the weight of the moment entirely. This is not just reacting to her presence. It is incorporating it. The system is not only responding, it is adapting, using her interaction as part of its structure. The implication of that is immediate and unsettling. It means that every action she takes is not just observed, but integrated into something larger. The voice softens slightly, losing some of its intensity, but not its direction. It remains focused on her, waiting, or perhaps guiding, though the intention is still unclear. Ilara stands there, caught between two choices that both feel significant. Step back, or move forward. The gap in the door remains small, but it feels larger than it is, like an opening that extends beyond its physical size. The air continues to flow from it, carrying that same dense, unfamiliar quality that presses against her senses. She slowly removes her hand from the surface. The moment she does, the vibration stops. The hum stabilizes again. The markings hold their shape, but the gap remains. That detail stands out more than anything else. The system has paused, but it has not reset. Ilara takes a step back, her mind racing as she processes everything that has just happened. The connection, the response, the shift in the door, all of it points to something that is no longer hidden. It is revealing itself, piece by piece, and she is now directly involved in that process. As she stands there, staring at the door, one thought becomes clear. Whatever is behind it is not waiting passively. It is expecting something, and she has just become part of that expectation. Ilara remains in front of the door longer than she intends to, not because she is unsure what to do, but because the moment feels like it demands a decision that cannot be undone. The small gap in the door does not change, yet it holds her attention completely, as if something beyond it is aware of her hesitation and allowing it to stretch. The hum has settled again into a controlled, almost neutral tone, which only makes the stillness more unsettling. It feels like the system has paused, not ended, and that pause carries intent. She finally steps back, creating distance between herself and the door, but the connection does not break as easily as she expects. Her awareness remains fixed on it, as if part of her focus is still anchored to that space. The air in the hallway feels slightly lighter the further she moves away, but not enough to erase the pressure that has built over the last few minutes. Whatever is behind that door is not contained in a simple way. It reaches beyond its physical boundary. Ilara turns and begins walking, her pace steady but deliberate, as she tries to regain a sense of control over her thoughts. The hallway appears stable again, the markings faint or hidden depending on where she looks, and the lighting consistent enough to create the illusion of normalcy. Yet nothing feels normal anymore. Every surface, every sound, every shift in temperature now carries meaning, whether she wants it to or not. As she moves further away, the hum fades slightly, becoming less dominant, and for a brief moment, the silence feels almost real. That moment allows her mind to catch up, to process the sequence of events in a clearer way. The interaction with the door was not random, and it was not isolated. It followed the same pattern she experienced in the room and along the wall, but at a higher level of intensity. That means the system has layers, and she has only begun to touch them. The thought settles in with a quiet weight, shaping the way she interprets everything around her. This is not a single phenomenon repeating itself. It is a structure with depth, with progression, and each interaction brings her further into it. That realization shifts her role again, from observer to participant to something closer to a variable within the system. She slows her pace as she approaches the central area of the facility, where the layout becomes more familiar and the sense of control appears stronger. The lighting is brighter here, the air more stable, and the absence of sound feels less oppressive. But even in this space, there are subtle signs that things are no longer fully contained. One of the walls carries a faint marking that was not there before. It is barely visible, easy to miss, but now that she knows what to look for, it stands out immediately. The line is shallow, incomplete, but clearly forming, as if the system is extending itself beyond the areas where it was originally concentrated. That detail confirms her suspicion. This is spreading, not rapidly, not chaotically, but steadily. Ilara stops in front of the marking, studying it carefully, and for a moment, she considers interacting with it again, testing whether the same response will occur. But she hesitates, not out of fear, but out of strategy. Repeating the same action without understanding the consequences could push the system further than she is ready to handle. That thought introduces something new. Restraint. She is no longer reacting to curiosity alone. She is beginning to think in terms of cause and effect, trying to predict how her actions might influence what happens next. That shift marks a clear change in her mindset, one that aligns more closely with survival than exploration. A voice breaks the silence behind her. Ilara. This time, it is clear. Not distorted. Not fragmented. A real voice. She turns immediately, her focus snapping into place, and sees Dr. Vance standing at the far end of the hallway. His posture is calm, composed as always, but there is something different in the way he is watching her. His gaze is more direct, more focused, as if he is seeing something new. For a brief second, neither of them speaks. The space between them feels charged, not with fear, but with awareness. It is no longer just a patient and a doctor standing in a hallway. There is something else now, something that has shifted the balance of that relationship. Dr. Vance takes a slow step forward, his movements controlled, his expression neutral but attentive. "You're adjusting faster than expected," he says, his voice steady, measured, as if each word has been chosen carefully. Ilara does not respond immediately. She studies him instead, searching for any sign that he understands what she has experienced, or worse, that he expected it. The thought that he might already know everything she has seen creates a tension that is difficult to ignore. "What is this place?" she finally asks, her voice calm but firm, no longer avoiding the question. Dr. Vance pauses. Not because he does not have an answer, but because he is deciding how much to reveal. "That depends on how you define it," he replies, his tone unchanged, though the words carry a subtle weight. "For some, it is a treatment facility. For others, it becomes something else." That answer does not satisfy her. It confirms what she already suspects. "You knew this would happen," she says, not as a question, but as a statement. Dr. Vance's expression shifts slightly, not enough to show emotion, but enough to acknowledge the accuracy of her words. "We anticipated a response," he says. "But not at this level, not this quickly." The confirmation lands heavily. This is not an accident, not an unknown phenomenon. It is something controlled, or at least something they believe they can control. "What is behind that door?" Ilara asks, her focus sharpening again, her tone more direct than before. For the first time, Dr. Vance hesitates in a way that feels genuine. His silence stretches for a moment, and in that pause, the tension between them grows. When he finally speaks, his voice is slightly lower, more measured than before. "Something that requires boundaries," he says. The answer is vague, but it carries enough weight to confirm its importance. It also confirms something else. He does not want her near it. Ilara takes a small step forward, closing part of the distance between them, her attention locked on his reaction. "And the markings?" she presses. "They're changing." Dr. Vance nods once, slowly, as if acknowledging a fact that no longer needs to be hidden. "They always change," he says. "That's the point." That statement shifts the entire context. The markings are not a side effect. They are the function. The system she has been interacting with is not breaking. It is operating exactly as intended. Ilara feels the weight of that realization settle in, reshaping everything she has experienced so far. The fear does not disappear, but it becomes sharper, more focused, because now it is tied to something deliberate rather than unknown. And the voices? She asks, her tone quieter now, but no less direct. Dr. Vance studies her for a moment, his gaze steady, as if measuring how much she can handle. Not everyone hears them, he says. And not everyone hears the same thing. That answer creates a new layer of tension, one that feels more personal than anything else. It suggests that her experience is not just part of the system, but something specific to her. Why me? She asks. Dr. Vance does not answer immediately. Instead, he takes another step forward, closing the distance further, his presence now more immediate. That's what we're trying to understand, he says. The words are simple, but they carry a deeper implication. She is not just a participant. She is a variable they are studying. That realization shifts the dynamic completely. Ilara steps back slightly, creating space between them again, her instincts reacting before her thoughts can fully catch up. The trust that might have existed before is gone, replaced by something more cautious, more guarded. Dr. Vance notices the shift, but he does not react to it directly. Instead, he maintains his calm posture, his controlled tone, as if the change was expected. You should get some rest, he says, though the suggestion feels more like a directive than advice. Ilara does not respond. She holds his gaze for a moment longer, then turns and walks past him, her movements steady, her focus inward. The hallway feels different again, not because it has changed, but because her understanding of it has. This is not a place that hides its purpose. It reveals it slowly. And now, she knows just enough to realize how much she does not know. As she walks away, the hum returns, low and steady, and for the first time, it feels less like a background presence and more like something watching from within the walls. Not observing. Not reacting. Waiting. Ilara does not return to her room immediately after passing Dr. Vance, even though the weight of that conversation lingers heavily in her thoughts. Instead, she continues walking, letting the structure of the facility guide her while her mind works through what she has just learned. The idea that everything she has experienced is not accidental, that it is part of a controlled process, shifts the meaning of every sound and movement around her. The hum, the markings, even the voices, all of it now feels intentional, designed to provoke, to measure, to push. The hallway opens into a wider section, one that feels more neutral compared to the corridors she has been moving through, but that neutrality no longer feels trustworthy. The lighting is brighter here, the air more stable, and the absence of visible markings creates a temporary sense of clarity. Yet even in this space, Ilara cannot ignore the underlying tension, the sense that this calm is only surface level, something maintained rather than natural. She slows her pace as she approaches a set of large windows that look out over the empty landscape surrounding the facility. The outside world stretches far beyond the building, open and silent, yet it does not feel like an escape. The distance only reinforces the isolation, making it clear that whatever is happening inside these walls is not easily left behind. Ilara studies the horizon for a moment, searching for something that feels real, something that exists outside the influence of the system she is now part of. But even that feels uncertain. Her reflection in the glass catches her attention, and for a brief second she focuses on it, grounding herself in something familiar. The image is steady, unchanged, yet there is something in her expression that feels different. Not fear alone, not confusion, but awareness, a shift that has happened gradually and now sits clearly on her face. A faint sound interrupts her thoughts. Not the hum. Something else. A soft, rhythmic tapping, distant but consistent enough to draw her attention immediately. Ilara turns away from the window, her focus sharpening as she tries to locate the source. The sound echoes faintly through the hallway, not tied to a single direction, but present enough to feel intentional. It reminds her of the first night. But this time it feels clearer, more controlled. She follows it. Each step is measured, her attention fully engaged, and as she moves deeper into the facility again, the environment begins to shift in subtle ways. The lighting dims slightly, the air cools, and the sense of space becomes less stable, though not enough to disorient her completely. The transition feels smoother than before, as if the system is no longer introducing itself, but continuing a process already in motion. The tapping grows louder, not significantly, but enough to confirm that she is moving in the right direction. The rhythm remains steady, almost mechanical, yet it carries a tone that feels too deliberate to be random. It is not just a sound. It feels like a signal, something meant to be followed. As she turns into a narrower corridor, the markings return. They are faint at first, barely visible along the edges of the walls, but they become more defined the further she goes. The patterns stretch along the surface in a way that feels guided, leading her forward rather than simply existing around her. That directional quality stands out immediately. This is not just spreading, it is guiding. Elara slows slightly, her awareness sharpening even further as she begins to notice how the patterns align with her movement. They do not change directly in front of her, but they seem to form more clearly along the path she is taking, as if reinforcing her direction. The idea that the system might be influencing her movement creates a tension that is difficult to ignore. She stops for a moment, testing it. The tapping continues. The hum remains steady. The markings hold their position. Then she takes a step in the opposite direction. For a brief second, nothing happens. Then the tapping weakens slightly. Not disappearing, but fading just enough to suggest a shift. Elara freezes. The implication is immediate. This is not passive. It is responsive. She turns back toward the original direction, and almost instantly, the tapping strengthens again, returning to its previous clarity. The confirmation is undeniable now. The system is not just reacting to her presence. It is guiding her choices. That realization changes everything. Elara takes a slow breath, her mind adjusting quickly to this new layer of interaction. If the system can guide, then it can also mislead. That possibility introduces a level of risk that goes beyond anything she has faced so far. Following it blindly is no longer an option, but ignoring it might not be possible either. She continues forward, but with a new awareness, watching not just the environment, but her own responses to it. Every step now carries intention, not just movement, as she tries to separate her decisions from the influence around her. The corridor narrows further, the walls closing in slightly, and the markings become more defined, more structured, forming patterns that feel increasingly deliberate. The tapping grows louder, its rhythm more pronounced, and the hum begins to layer beneath it, creating a combined effect that feels almost synchronized. At the end of the corridor, she sees it. A figure. Not distorted, not shadowed, standing still, facing her. Elara stops immediately, her body tensing as her mind processes what she is seeing. The figure does not move, does not react, but its presence feels solid, undeniable in a way that the previous encounters did not. This is not a flicker or a distortion. This is something real. She studies it carefully, her eyes scanning for detail, for any sign of identity. The figure appears human, its posture natural, its form stable, but there is something off in the way it stands. Not unnatural, but too still, too precise, as if it is holding position rather than existing within it. The tapping stops. The silence that follows is immediate and heavy. The hum remains, low and steady, filling the space beneath the stillness. Elara takes a step forward. The figure does not move. Another step. Still nothing. The distance between them feels controlled, each step bringing her closer, but not reducing the tension. The air grows colder, sharper, pressing against her skin as if reacting to the proximity. When she is close enough, she stops again. The figure stands just a few feet away now, its features still not fully clear, as if something is obscuring them without actually blocking her view. That subtle distortion creates a barrier that feels more psychological than physical. Elara. The voice comes from the figure. Direct. And unmistakably familiar. She freezes. The tone is not distorted, not layered, not distant. It is human. And she knows it. A wave of recognition hits her, sharp and immediate, though she cannot place it fully. The familiarity is there, undeniable, but disconnected from a clear memory. That disconnect creates a tension that feels deeper than fear. Do you understand now? The figure speaks again, its voice steady, controlled, carrying a calm that feels almost unnatural given the situation. Ilara does not answer. Her focus remains locked on the figure, her mind racing as it tries to connect the voice to something real, something she can anchor to. The question lingers in the air, unanswered, but heavy with implication. The markings along the walls deepen slightly. The hum shifts. Everything around her feels like it is waiting. Not for movement, not for change, for her response. And for the first time, the realization becomes unavoidable. This is no longer just a system she is exploring. It is something that is beginning to communicate back in a way that expects her to engage. Ilara stands completely still after hearing her name spoken in that unmistakably human tone, and the weight of that single moment settles deeper than anything she has experienced so far because it removes the last layer of uncertainty she was holding onto. Up until now, every sound, every voice, every reaction could have been part of a system she did not fully understand, but this feels different in a way that is impossible to ignore. The familiarity in the voice does not just suggest recognition, it demands it, and that demand creates a tension inside her that is sharper than fear. Her eyes remain fixed on the figure, searching for clarity in its features, but that subtle distortion still lingers, preventing her from fully identifying what stands in front of her. The figure does not move immediately after speaking, as if allowing the impact of the moment to settle before continuing. The silence stretches between them, but it is not empty, it feels structured, almost intentional, like a space designed for her to react. The hum beneath it remains steady, low, and controlled, reinforcing the sense that this interaction is not separate from the system, but a deeper layer of it. Ilara's breathing slows, not because she feels calm, but because she is forcing herself to stay focused, to not let the emotional weight of recognition override her ability to think. "You're closer than the others," the figure says, its voice maintaining that same grounded tone, clear and direct without any distortion. The words are simple, but they carry a meaning that expands quickly in her mind, suggesting that this process has happened before, that there have been others who reached this point but did not go further. That implication shifts the situation again, turning what felt like a personal experience into part of something repeated, something structured over time. Ilara finally speaks, her voice steady but carrying a tension that reflects the weight of everything she has processed so far. She asks who it is, not expecting a simple answer, but needing to anchor this moment in something real. The question hangs between them, and for a second, it feels like the system itself is listening, as if the space has tightened around the exchange. The figure tilts its head slightly, a small movement, but one that feels deliberate enough to matter, and when it responds, the answer does not come in the form she expects. It does not give a name or a clear identity, but instead says that names are less important here than function, and that what she is seeing is not separate from what she has already experienced. That response deepens the tension rather than resolving it, because it confirms that the figure is connected to the system in a way that goes beyond simple presence. Ilara takes a slow step forward, closing the distance slightly, her focus sharpening despite the unease building inside her. She studies the figure more closely, trying to push past the distortion that hides its features, and for a brief moment, she feels like she almost sees something familiar, a shape, a detail, something that connects to a memory she cannot fully access. That near recognition creates a pull, a need to get closer, to confirm what her instincts are telling her. The hum shifts subtly, becoming slightly more layered, and the markings along the walls deepen just enough to be noticeable, as if the environment is responding to the intensity of the moment. The connection between her and the figure feels stronger now, not just through sound, but through the space itself, which seems to align around their interaction. "You've already changed it," the figure continues, its voice calm, almost measured, as if stating a fact rather than offering an opinion. The words immediately bring her attention back to the markings, to the way they responded to her touch, to the patterns that shifted when she interacted with them. The realization settles quickly, confirming that whatever this system is, her presence within it is not passive. Ilara's mind moves rapidly, connecting the pieces, the room, the walls, the door, the markings, all of it forming a structure that is beginning to make a different kind of sense. It is not something she fully understands, but it is something she can now see as a system with rules, with responses, with progression. The fear that comes with that understanding is sharper because it is no longer tied to the unknown, but to something that is actively involving her. What happens if I keep going? She asks, her voice quieter now, but more focused, as if she is no longer questioning the reality of the situation, but the outcome of it. The figure does not answer immediately, and that pause feels heavier than any direct response. When it finally speaks, its tone shifts slightly, not in clarity, but in weight, as if the words carry more consequence. It says that continuing means becoming part of the structure in a way that cannot be undone, that understanding comes with a cost that cannot be reversed once it is fully reached. That answer does not feel like a warning. It feels like a fact. Ilara absorbs it without reacting outwardly, but the tension inside her increases, because the implication is clear. This is not a path she can walk halfway. There is no point where she can step back and return to what she was before. The system does not just show itself, it integrates. The markings along the walls shift slightly again, not dramatically, but enough to reinforce that the process is still active, still evolving. The hum remains steady, but it feels deeper now, more present, as if it has moved closer to the surface of everything around her. Why me? She asks again, her voice steady but carrying a deeper layer of urgency this time, because the question is no longer just about curiosity, it is about understanding her role in something that feels increasingly structured around her presence. The figure steps forward. It is the first clear movement it has made, and it changes the entire dynamic of the moment. The distance between them closes slightly, and with it, the distortion around its features shifts just enough to suggest more clarity, though still not enough to fully reveal its identity. The movement feels controlled, intentional, and it carries a sense of progression rather than reaction. Because you're responding, it says. The simplicity of that answer makes it heavier, because it does not explain everything, but it confirms enough. This is not random selection, not chance, not something that happened without reason. It is based on interaction, on response, on the way she has engaged with the system so far. Ilara processes that quickly, her thoughts aligning with the realization that others may have been here, may have seen parts of this, but did not reach this level because they did not respond in the same way. That idea separates her from the rest, placing her in a position that feels both significant and dangerous. The air around them grows colder again, the space tightening slightly, and the hum deepens just enough to signal another shift. The markings on the walls begin to align more clearly, forming patterns that feel less random than before, more structured, more intentional, as if the system is moving into another phase. The figure watches her closely, its presence steady, its attention focused entirely on her reaction. There is no urgency in its posture, no pressure in its voice, yet the moment feels like it is building towards something that requires a decision. Ilara feels it, not as a thought, but as a pressure, something that exists within the space itself, pushing the moment forward without forcing it. The awareness that she is approaching a point where her choice will matter more than anything she has done so far settles in with a clarity that is impossible to ignore. And for the first time, the question is no longer about what this place is. It is about what she is willing to become within it. The weight of that realization does not fade after the figure's words settle into the silence. Instead, it grows heavier with each passing second, as if the space itself is reinforcing the importance of what comes next. Ilara does not respond immediately, not because she lacks an answer, but because she understands now that any response she gives will carry consequences that extend beyond this moment. The hum beneath everything remains steady, but it feels deeper, more embedded in the structure around her, as if it is no longer just part of the environment, but part of the process unfolding. She studies the figure carefully, her focus sharper than before, trying to push past the distortion that still hides its features, and for a brief second, something shifts just enough to create a flicker of recognition that feels stronger than before. It is not a full image, not a clear identity, but a suggestion of familiarity that connects to something buried deeper in her memory. That connection creates a tension that is harder to control, because it suggests that this is not just about the present, but something that reaches back further than she has considered. "What does that mean?" she asks slowly, her voice steady but carrying a weight that reflects the shift in her understanding, because she is no longer asking out of confusion, but out of intent. The question is not about the system itself anymore, but about her place within it, about the role she is beginning to occupy whether she chooses it or not. The figure does not rush to answer, and that pause feels deliberate, as if it is allowing her to fully feel the importance of what she is asking. When it finally speaks, its tone remains calm, but there is a depth to it now that was not as clear before. It explains that response is not just about interaction, but about alignment, about the way her perception has begun to match the structure of the system itself. The more she sees, the more she understands, the more she becomes compatible with it. That explanation does not simplify anything. It complicates it further, because it suggests that this process is not just external. It is internal. Ilara absorbs that slowly, her thoughts moving through everything she has experienced, the markings, the sounds, the shifts in space, all of it forming a pattern that now feels less like something happening to her and more like something happening through her. That realization creates a deeper level of unease, because it removes the idea of separation. She is not just inside this system. She is becoming part of its function. The air around them grows colder again, but this time the change feels less environmental and more connected to the moment itself, as if the system is tightening its focus around their interaction. The markings along the walls begin to shift more noticeably, not wildly, but with a controlled progression that suggests movement toward a specific voice, quieter now, but more deliberate, because the implication of what she is experiencing extends beyond her. If she is progressing, then there must be others who did not, and that thought carries a weight she cannot ignore. The figure remains still for a moment before answering, and when it does, the response is measured, almost neutral. It explains that not everyone reaches this stage, and those who do not are unable to perceive what she is seeing now. For them, the system remains limited, contained within boundaries that prevent deeper interaction. They leave or they stay, but they do not change in the same way. That answer confirms something important. This is selective, not random, not universal. Ilara processes that quickly, her understanding sharpening as she realizes that what she is experiencing is not just rare, but specific to her response, her perception, her willingness to engage with what the system presents. That specificity makes the situation feel more personal, more focused, as if everything has been leading her to this point. "And if I stop?" she asks, her voice steady, though the question itself carries uncertainty, because she already suspects the answer. The figure's response is immediate this time, almost as if it has been waiting for that question. It says that stopping is still a choice, but it comes with its own consequence, that the awareness she has gained will not fully disappear, and that returning to a state of not knowing is no longer possible. The system does not erase. It only limits further access. That clarity lands heavily. There is no return to what she was before, only a decision about what comes next. The hum deepens slightly, reinforcing the weight of that realization, and the markings along the walls begin to align more clearly, forming patterns that feel closer to completion. The environment itself seems to be responding to the progression of the moment, as if it is moving towards something that requires her input to finalize. The figure takes another step forward, closing the distance further, and this time the distortion around its features shifts more noticeably, revealing just enough to create a stronger sense of recognition without fully resolving it. Ilara feels it immediately, that pull toward understanding, toward confirming what her instincts have been suggesting since the beginning of this encounter. "You're already connected," the figure says, its voice steady, but carrying a deeper emphasis now, as if reinforcing a fact she can no longer deny. "The only question is how far you're willing to go." That question does not feel rhetorical. It feels immediate. The space around them tightens slightly, the air growing denser, the hum settling into a deeper frequency that feels almost anchored in place. The markings on the walls shift again, their structure becoming more defined, more complete, as if they are waiting for a final element to lock into place. Ilara feels the pressure of that moment fully now, not just as a thought, but as something physical, something that exists in the space around her and within her at the same time. The choice in front of her is no longer abstract. It is real, immediate, and irreversible in ways she cannot fully predict. She looks at the figure again, her focus steady, her mind clear despite the tension building around her. The fear is still there, but it has changed, becoming less about what might happen and more about what she is choosing to become. Slowly, she takes a step forward. The reaction is immediate. The hum deepens. The markings shift. The air tightens. Everything responds at once, as if her movement has triggered a new phase within the system. The figure does not move this time. It remains where it is, watching her, as if confirming the choice she has just made without needing to say it out loud. Ilara stops just a short distance away, close enough now that the distortion around the figure begins to weaken further, revealing more detail than before, though still not enough to fully resolve its identity. That partial clarity feels intentional, as if the final piece of understanding is being held back until the last possible moment. The space around them stabilizes briefly, not returning to normal, but holding in a state that feels suspended, as if everything is waiting for one more action, one more step, one more decision. And Ilara knows it. She feels it in the way the environment holds itself, in the way the hum settles into a steady, expectant tone, in the way the markings seem to pause just short of completion. This is the threshold. Not a physical one, but something deeper. And she is standing directly in front of it. Ilara stands at that invisible threshold without moving for several seconds, and the stillness that surrounds her feels heavier than anything she has experienced so far because it carries expectation rather than uncertainty. The hum beneath the space has settled into a deep, steady tone that no longer fluctuates, as if the system has reached a point where variation is no longer needed. The markings along the walls hold their form, no longer shifting or expanding, but waiting, suspended in a near-complete state that suggests something is missing. That absence is not random. It is specific, and she knows, without needing to be told, that it is tied directly to her. Her breathing remains controlled, but there is a tension in it now that reflects the weight of what she is about to do. The fear has not disappeared, but it has transformed into something more focused, something that exists alongside a growing sense of clarity. For the first time, she is not reacting to the system. She is choosing how to engage with it. That shift changes the nature of everything around her, turning the environment from something unpredictable into something that is waiting for her input. The figure in front of her remains still, its presence steady, its attention fixed entirely on her, and the distortion that once obscured its features has weakened further, revealing more of its outline, more of its shape, though still holding back just enough to prevent full recognition. That partial clarity feels deliberate, as if the system is maintaining a final barrier, one that can only be crossed through action rather than observation. Ilara takes a slow step forward. The reaction is immediate but controlled, not chaotic like before, but precise, as if the system has been prepared for this exact moment. The hum deepens slightly, not in volume, but in presence, becoming something that feels almost anchored beneath her feet. The markings along the walls respond in unison, their lines sharpening, their structure tightening into a configuration that feels closer to completion than anything she has seen so far. The air grows colder again, but this time the sensation is different. It does not feel like resistance or warning. It feels like transition, as if the space itself is shifting to accommodate what is happening. Ilara feels it clearly, not just around her, but within her, a subtle change in perception that makes everything feel more aligned, more connected. She takes another step. The figure does not move, but the distortion around it fades further, revealing more detail, more definition, until the outline begins to resemble something unmistakably human. The familiarity that she felt earlier returns with greater intensity, no longer a faint suggestion, but something that presses against her awareness, demanding recognition. The hum stabilizes again. The markings hold. The space tightens. Everything is waiting. Ilara lifts her hands slowly, her movements deliberate, her focus completely fixed on the figure in front of her. The distance between them is small now, close enough that the air between them feels charged, as if it carries something unseen that connects them. Her hand hovers for a brief moment, the same hesitation returning, but weaker now, because the need to understand has grown stronger than the instinct to step back. Then she moves forward and makes contact. The moment her hand touches the figure, everything shifts. The hum spikes sharply, not in chaos, but in intensity, rising to a level that feels almost overwhelming without becoming uncontrolled. The markings along the walls react instantly, their lines pulsing faintly, their structure locking into place as if a final piece has been added. The air compresses, the space tightening around her in a way that feels both constricting and focused at the same time. The sensation that moves through her is immediate and unlike anything she has felt before. It is not just physical. It is not just perceptual. It is something deeper, something that feels like information moving through her rather than around her, a rapid sequence of impressions, fragments, and connections that pass through her awareness faster than she can process them. Images. Not clear, not complete, but present. The facility. The markings. Other figures. Moments that feel like they belong to different times but exist within the same structure. The system. All of it layered together in a way that feels overwhelming, yet controlled, as if she is being shown something rather than experiencing it randomly. Her grip tightens slightly, not out of fear, but out of instinct, as if holding on will allow her to maintain that connection just long enough to understand it. The figure does not react physically, but the presence it carries feels stronger now, more defined, as if the contact has removed the final barrier between them.